Don't you lads try anything. You might get me, but first I'll blast him right in the belly. That tough line came from a man whose face became one of the most recognizable in old Western movies. Randolph Scott wasn't just any actor. He starred in over 50 Westerns, always playing the brave hero who saved the day. But his personal life was very different from the cowboy characters he played. People in Hollywood whispered about his strange marriage to a woman who lived far away. He also shared a beach house for years with another famous actor, which raised a lot of questions. After he died, his family found out something that completely shocked them. Randolph, who was known for being calm and serious on screen, had secretly built a fortune so large it changed their lives forever. In the end, the quiet cowboy had the last laugh. Randolph Scott was born on January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia. But this wasn't really his family's home. They were just visiting relatives at the time. All 5 of his siblings were born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Randolph was the only one born outside the state. His father, George Grant Scott, worked as a textile engineer and became the first certified public accountant in North Carolina. That was a big deal back then. His mother, Lucille, came from a wealthy, respected Southern family. So Randolph grew up with both money and intelligence on his side. His family was Scottish-American and well-respected in Southern society. They lived in a beautiful large house in Charlotte, which is still standing today. In 1927, they moved into a luxurious home designed by a famous architect. Randolph had a privileged childhood, attending private schools and making well-connected friends. He went to Woodbury Forest School in Virginia, a place where wealthy Southern boys were prepared to become future leaders. There, he learned how to carry himself with grace and confidence. He was athletic too. He played football and baseball, swam competitively, and raced horses. These weren't just pastimes. They were expensive, serious sports. Randolph first played football at Georgia Tech and dreamed of becoming an All-American player, but a serious back injury ended that dream. He later transferred to the University of North Carolina to study textile engineering, following in his father's footsteps. Ironically, the same skills he gained from sports, especially horseback riding, made him perfect for Western films later on. He wasn't just physically skilled. Randolph also grew up with strong Southern values. As a teen, he acted in plays put on by the United Daughters of the Confederacy, which celebrated themes like honor, loss, and sacrifice. These shaped the soft, refined Southern accent that became part of his charm in films. While many young men struggled to find jobs after World War I, Randolph didn't have that problem. After serving in the military, his father helped him get a letter of introduction to none other than Howard Hughes, the famous businessman and filmmaker. That letter opened the door to Hollywood in 1928. Randolph had already shown bravery during World War I. He joined the National Guard at just 19, and by the next year, he had been promoted several times. He served on the front lines in France, directing mortar fire from trenches while under enemy attack. He never talked about what he saw during the war, but the experience left a lasting impression on him. Those real-life experiences made his later film roles more believable. When he played soldiers and cowboys, it didn't feel like acting, it felt real. He knew how to ride horses through rough terrain, handle guns, and survive under pressure. After the war, he tried college again, first at Georgia Tech and then at UNC, but his injury and boredom with academic life made him leave. He joined his father's textile company and worked hard in different roles, from accountant to office manager. But something inside him wanted more. In 1929, while playing a round of golf at the Los Angeles Country Club, fate stepped in. He was paired with Howard Hughes. Hughes noticed Randolph's tall frame, good looks, and smooth Southern manners. He offered him a small role in the movie The Far Call. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Realizing he needed training, Randolph enrolled at the Pasadena Playhouse, the top acting school in the West. He worked hard to develop his acting skills. In 1931, famous director Cecil B. DeMille came to watch a play and noticed Randolph. He said, "That young man has something Hollywood can't teach." That same year, Randolph helped coach actor Gary Cooper on his Virginia accent for the film The Virginian. Randolph wasn't even in the movie, but he made Cooper sound more authentic, and people noticed. In 1932, Randolph signed a contract with Paramount Pictures and starred in Hot Saturday alongside a young Cary Grant. The two became very close. They lived together in a Malibu beach house for over a decade. Some people thought they were just best friends. Others believed there was something more between them. They were photographed golfing, relaxing at the beach, and even working out together. In 1936, Randolph married Marion DuPont Somerville, a wealthy heiress from the famous DuPont family. She lived in Virginia, and he worked in Los Angeles. Their marriage was so private that the press didn't find out for months. But their lives were very different. She loved horses and stayed in Virginia. He stayed busy in Hollywood. They separated quietly in 1939 after 3 years. There were no scandals, no public fights. They just lived in different worlds. She kept the Scott last name until she passed away in 1983, a quiet sign of respect. Before the marriage ended, Randolph had already moved in with Cary Grant in 1935. Their home was known as Bachelor Hall. It was large, stylish, and full of luxury. The gossip never stopped, especially since Cary briefly married, divorced, and moved back in with Randolph. Under pressure from Hollywood studios, both men eventually married women and ended their co-living arrangement. Still, they stayed friends for life, a rare thing in Hollywood. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, Randolph wasn't just doing westerns. He acted in musicals, comedies, and historical dramas. He starred alongside Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Mae West, and even played Hawkeye in The Last of the Mohicans. Randolph Scott was once considered for the role of Ashley Wilkes in Gone with the Wind, but the part went to Leslie Howard. Still, his early career bloomed with versatility, appearing in Roberta, Pittsburgh, and even Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. Critics admired how he moved between genres, charming one moment, intense the next. He wasn't just another cowboy. Not yet. Those formative years helped him find his range and build a strong fan base. By the early 1940s, Scott wasn't switching genres anymore. Westerns had become his home, and he wore the cowboy hat like he was born with it. Directors loved working with him. Michael Curtiz once said, "Scott was the only gentleman I've met in this business." That meant something in an industry full of egos. Early on, producer C.C. DeMille sent him to train at the Pasadena Playhouse before giving him big roles. Scott listened, learned, and never made trouble. He worked with greats like George B. Seitz, The Last of the Mohicans, and Henry King, Jesse James. They respected his discipline. He was always on time, always prepared. Behind the scenes, he lived up to his Southern gentleman image. 2 roles changed everything. In 1936, The Last of the Mohicans proved he could lead an adventure film. At just 92 minutes, it was tight, fast, and full of action. Scott's Hawkeye was a hero with heart. Then came Jesse James in 1939. Scott played Will Wright alongside Tyrone Power and Henry Fonda. The film made over $2.3 million in the US and Canada, behind only Gone with the Wind and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington that year. One scene involving a horse caused such a stir it helped push Hollywood to adopt animal protection standards on set. That's how big the film was. When America entered World War II, Scott tried to enlist in the Marines but was turned down due to a back injury. Still, he didn't sit it out. He toured military bases with comedian Joe DeRita, performing for troops. On his ranch, he grew food for the government. On screen, he kept spirits high with war movies like To the Shores of Tripoli, Bombardier, Corvette K-225, and Gung Ho. These weren't just films, they were morale boosters. Scott became a symbol of American strength, both real and imagined. In 1944, he married Patricia Stillman. Their marriage lasted until his death in 1987, over 40 years. They adopted 2 children, Christopher and Sandra. While other Hollywood couples burned bright and fast, Scott's family life stayed solid and private. It gave him a kind of peace most stars never found. He also knew how to handle business. In the late 1940s, Scott partnered with producer Harry Joe Brown to form Randolph Productions, a name drawn from Randolph and Brown. Back then, most actors had no control. Studios made all the calls. But with Randolph, Scott picked his own projects, mainly westerns. He had creative control and better pay. That decision shaped the final stretch of his career. In 1946, Badman's Territory hit theaters. Scott played Mark Rowley, a lawman facing off against outlaws like Jesse James and the Dalton Gang. The film earned a $557,000 profit. Big money at the time. Audiences loved it. It spawned 2 sequels and confirmed Scott as a guaranteed box office draw. Randolph Scott didn't become a Hollywood legend overnight. But between 1950 and 1953, something rare happened. He broke into the top 10 list of America's most popular male stars, and stayed there for 4 straight years. That was nearly unheard of, especially for someone making westerns, a genre that rarely dominated the box office. Even more remarkable, Scott was already in his 50s. Yet his movies kept making money. By 1950, he was earning $100,000 per film, about $1.3 million today. Families across the country lined up to see his quiet, powerful brand of justice. His fans included wide-eyed kids, tough ranchers, and everyone in between. He became more than a star. He became a symbol. That rise wasn't just about numbers. It was about the stories he told, and the way he told them. In Trail Street, 1947, he played Bat Masterson, a no-nonsense lawman sent to clean up a wild Kansas town. The film crackled with energy and earned a tidy $365,000 profit. That same year, in Gunfighters, Scott played a broken man trying to escape his violent past after killing his best friend. His grief felt real, quiet and powerful. By 1949, he pushed further in The Walking Hills, a dusty, gritty treasure hunt set in the desert. That film blended Western grit with film noir mystery, and Scott stood tall at its center, calm, steady, and deeply human. As his roles grew deeper, so did his look. By the late 1940s, his face had changed. It was tougher, sharper, marked by years of wind and sun from shooting on location. But instead of hiding his age, Scott leaned into it. His leathery skin and cold stare made him feel authentic. You believed this man had seen things, hard things. His face told stories, even when he didn't speak. That weathered look reminded people of old legends like William S. Hart. It made Scott stand out even more. Then came the most important stretch of his career, the Randolph cycle. Between 1956 and 1960, Scott and director Bud Boeticher made 7 lean, haunting westerns: 7 Men From Now, The Tall T, Decision at Sundown, Buchanan Rides Alone, Westbound, Ride Lonesome, and Comanche Station. These weren't big-budget epics. They were tight, stripped down, and rich with meaning. Each one peeled back a layer of the Western hero, showing his pain, his regrets, his loneliness. In 7 Men From Now, Scott played a man haunted by guilt. His wife had been killed in a robbery, and he blamed himself. He'd refused lesser work out of pride, forcing her to take the job that led to her death. Every step he took, every man he faced, was driven by that sorrow. Lee Marvin played his rival, a charming killer who mirrored Scott's darker side. Their conflict wasn't just physical, it was personal. The film didn't end with triumph. It ended with a man still carrying his burden, knowing revenge couldn't bring peace. 1 year later, The Tall T went even deeper. Scott's character, Pat Brennan, tried to trade candy with a bull in one scene, and somehow that quiet moment said it all. He wasn't a brute. He was a thinker, a man who valued wit over force. Thrust into a hostage situation with ruthless killers and an innocent woman, the real tension came not from gunfights, but from choices. Could he save her? Could he trust his enemies? Could he walk away? By 1959, in Ride Lonesome, Scott gave one of his most painful performances. He played Ben Brigade, a bounty hunter who didn't want the reward, He wanted justice. Years earlier, his wife had been kidnapped and killed. The man who did it was still out there. So Brigade captured the killer's brother, not for money, but as bait. In the final scene, he burns the tree where his wife was hanged. That fire isn't just closure, it's the start of healing. Silent, powerful, unforgettable. Scott's final film, Comanche Station, 1960, became his farewell. He played Jefferson Cody, a man who'd spent 10 years searching for his wife, taken by the Comanches. In rescuing another woman, he hoped, just maybe, he'd find her. But she wasn't the one. Still, he kept his word and took her home, protecting her from danger along the way. When it was over, he rode off alone. Still searching. Still hoping. That was Scott's final message. Heroes don't always win. Sometimes, they just keep going. In 1962, Ride the High Country seemed like just another small-budget western. Director Sam Peckinpah wasn't yet a big name. He was young, stubborn, full of bold ideas. The production was a mess. Originally slated for scenic Mammoth Lakes, California, the shoot was moved to Bronson Canyon in LA due to bad weather. MGM President Joseph Vogel hated the film so much he fell asleep during a screening and called it the worst movie I've ever seen. MGM dumped it onto the bottom half of double features. In the US, it flopped. But in Europe, Ride the High Country struck a chord. Slowly, its reputation grew. In 1992, it was added to the National Film Registry. At the center of it was Scott, playing Gil Westrom, an aging ex-lawman trying to stay relevant in a changing world. The film takes place around 1905, when the frontier was dying. Scott's face, weathered, honest, and serious, was perfect for the role. Westrom is torn between greed and loyalty, gold and honor. Behind the camera, Scott and co-star Joel McCrea were facing their own twilight. Real-life legends playing men out of time. The result was quiet, powerful, and deeply moving. The cinematography helped too. Lucien Ballard's soft, autumn-hued shots made the whole film feel like a goodbye, not just to the frontier, but to the old Hollywood Western. This was no ordinary cowboy film. It had soul. Scott delivered one of the most emotional performances of his career. Maybe the most emotional. Maybe the best. He thought so too. After that, he retired from acting for good. He said what he needed to say through Gil Westrom. He knew he could never top it, so he didn't try. But Scott wasn't just smart on screen. He was even smarter off it. When he left Hollywood in 1962, he focused on business, and played that game better than almost anyone. By the mid-1960s, his fortune had reached $100 million, nearly $280 million today. Most actors didn't think like that. Scott did. He bought land early and held on, especially in San Fernando and Palm Springs. Those properties alone became worth over $100 million by 1965. He also founded the Park Ridge Country Club in Corona, California, in 1927, later known as Cresta Verde. It became a favorite spot for stars like Lucille Ball, Burt Lancaster, and Clark Gable. Scott loved golf, but it was also a savvy investment. Mixing passion with profit. Few did it better. When Randolph Scott died in 1987, he left more than just a film legacy. His fortune was still around $100 million, even adjusted for inflation. For comparison, Cary Grant's estate was worth about $130 million. Katharine Hepburn's, around $30 million. Scott's numbers were in a league of their own. In his final years, the strong cowboy began to fade. He had heart problems and struggled to breathe. Pneumonia sent him to the hospital more than once. On March 2, 1987, he died quietly in his sleep at home in Beverly Hills. He was 89. Just 2 months earlier, his old friend Cary Grant had passed away. At Scott's funeral, only 25 family members attended. It was held near his boyhood home in Charlotte, North Carolina. Reverend Billy Graham led the service. President Ronald Reagan sent a telegram, calling Randolph Scott one of Hollywood's finest talents.